and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast. My name is Chris Austin.
I'm Nathaniel Dombeck.
And I'm Ian Hawks.
And this is a podcast where we're going to be discussing what's showing at the historic Phoenix Cinema venue in East Finchley, North London, which we're very excited about. It's a beautiful cinema. I went there just a couple of weeks ago to watch the film that we'll be discussing on this episode, which is Poor Things. But first, before we get into that, why don't we just go around and talk about how we know each other? How do we know each other? How do we know each other? How do you know me, Nick?
Well, I know Chris because we went to the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts, which is a film acting conservatory in New York City, way back in 2012 to 13, God. If you
That's
can
insane.
believe it.
That is insane.
And I know Ian even farther back. We grew up down the street from each other. We went to the same school, and I think the first time we met was in a fencing class.
A sword fighting class, which tells you a lot that you need to know about the two of us. Yeah, I remember I got in a heated discussion with your mom about a detail in the Fellowship of the Ring, and then she brought her book the next week to class to show me in the book the point that she was trying to make.
And I remember, right, it was, you guys were saying, was it a cave troll or was it an orc?
We were
chief?
disagreeing about whether in the book it's a cave troll that stabs Frodo versus an orc captain. I was correct in Moria. I was correct. It's an orc captain. It's not a cave troll. The cave troll was Jackson's interpretation. But yeah. Nate and I grew up together, and then I know Chris because I was invited to the Film Geeks, which is a group of friends that Chris and Nate pulled together a couple years ago that meets and discusses films once a week. So we've been chatting about movies. I joined that group about a year ago, and we chat about a weekly film. And we're excited to share our love of films with more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can let's kick off. I went to the Phoenix Cinema to watch Poor Things. When was this? Last week, a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a beautiful venue. It's really, I mean, obviously it's got a lot of history and prestige to it, but it's so nice. It's it's small. You can tell when you go inside. It's an extremely old building. But there's such a lovely sense of community. The staff are friendly. I think for me, the most impressive thing about the cinema is the auditorium itself. It's gorgeous. It's got they've kept this like original 1930s Art Deco design along the walls, and it's just grand. That's what it's what you think of when you think of a grand auditorium going up to the the big red curtains, and really, really beautiful venue. And
I do miss like the sort of we've moved away from like going to the movies as like almost a theater experience, and it's more of this like there's these big chaise lounge chairs and you're kind of just in this. It might not be all that designed, that interestingly, but so that's super cool. That's super, super cool. I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. It feels like a throwback. It really does. Yeah. So yeah, really, really gorgeous surroundings to, as an environment. And then when the movie began, I had to laugh straight away because it was like a matinee showing. I went at like 2 p.m. So it was pretty much like an older crowd. And when the movie begins, everyone's sort of spread out, having their little chats among themselves. And then the disclaimer came up on the film that said, strong sex, violence, language. And this woman, a couple of rows behind me, turned to her friend or, whoever she was with and said, "What does strong sex mean?" and her friend started sniggering and going, "Shh." And she said, no, what does that mean? She said, as opposed to weak sex?
I will say this movie does have some strong sex in it.
It certainly does.
It's aptly named disclaimer right there.
It certainly does. Yeah, it's wall to wall sex. It should have said.
Sex and more sex. Yeah.
Sex and more sex. Yeah, but okay. So what I will say is, I watched this film in trepidation
Mm.
because Yorgos Lanthimos, I don't get it. I don't get it most of the time. I wasn't a big fan of The Favorite or The Lobster. I couldn't get on board with his style and his aesthetic and how he presents his story, and especially how the actors are almost told to perform in a very particular way. And I just could never, it was like a barrier to me. So I watched this with some apprehension, and what I will say is I had a damn good time.
Oh,
Hey,
nice.
I
I'm so
enjoyed the hell out of
sweet.
this movie. You see how
Really?
surprised you're so surprised. I know you're
I'm super
surprised.
surprised.
But
That's
yeah, no, I
great.
thought it was really enjoyable. It kind of feels to me like almost the more commercialist film of Lanthimos's
Yeah.
filmography.
It's got
Yeah.
some
Um,
names for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like it's super absurd. It's very strange. It's very weird. However, I could sort of, there was a real plot to it. There was an arc to it that there was a through line that I could really follow, despite the absurdity that happens throughout. So yeah, I'm just glad that I could really connect with the film and follow it. Um, yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I thought this movie was hilarious. The screen I was in didn't think it was hilarious, so I
Mm.
found myself being the only one laughing.
That was me too. Yeah, that was me
Oh,
too.
really?
I saw it at a matinee as well, interestingly, with our friend Allie. But it was us and kind of an older crowd. There was someone like reading a book during the previews. That's when you know you're at a good matinee. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I was like gut laughing like the whole movie, and I was worried I was annoying people because I
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
yeah, me too.
also I also loved this film. I mean, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a big Yorgos Lanthimos film fan. All of his movies are in like my top 50 films. So I was really excited for this movie, but I was actually shocked at how much I enjoyed it, and also I think how much of it maybe an exploration of some new things for his directorial palette. I kind of feel like it was. I mean, it's definitely a Lanthimos film, but like I
Mm.
found it shockingly kind of optimistic and uplifting, and kind of in ways that I think his other films maybe haven't read to me. And when I left, because I left the theater being like, even though Chris doesn't love his other films, I could see you getting behind the comedy in this movie, which is why I was really excited for you to see it, because it has that level of absurdism and also the great relationships in the film. I could see you like really
Mm.
getting excited about.
Mm.
So I'm glad you enjoyed it, because when I left the theater, I was thinking to myself, this might be the Yorgos Lanthimos film that Chris can get behind.
It is. Yeah, it certainly is. Nate, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was super surprised. I didn't have any notion of like what this film was going to be, if you can believe it. This is my first Lanthimos film.
Oh, really?
Just yeah, I've missed the boat on all the other ones. And so I was expecting kind of like a period piece, pretty straightforward, and then I was kind of slapped in the face with like, nope, this is definitely this
I mean, that is
is
the way Portugal is. Like that is historically accurate.
um
Just
yeah,
like
and I
a,
was
a set.
super it I mean I loved that I got surprised like that. It made the whole thing like really fun, in a fairly brutal way. Um but ultimately, yeah, like I was really leaning in to all of like the trying to discern like the greater message of the film, and really thinking about like the title, Poor Things, and like how like what the title is trying to say in like relation to the film. And what I came away with was just so impressed and just moved by Bella Baxter's character arc, and the way that she comes into the world so innocent, and then develops to see the world with like such clarity.
Totally. It could have gone to such really, really dismal, terribly dark places. I
Yeah.
mean, you have a child inside an adult's body,
Mm.
And so it's like it could have, and then the filmmaker's interested in exploring themes of sex and violence. I mean, it could have gone to really horrific places. And
Yeah.
I found myself in the first 30 minutes being like, "Oof, like, am I just going to be dragged through the mud?" And there's certainly some really harrowing stuff in the film, but I was surprised at how optimistic the film is about naivete and about kind of exploration to some degree.
Right, because like that arc, when she gets to the end, she just like sees the world with like such clarity,
Mm.
um that really like challenged my own world perception and like really asked me to think like a bit more radically about how I see things, how I see people and our society and the way it functions, and women as well, and like how they like are sort of navigate the world that we live in, um, which I super appreciated. It reminded me a lot of Daisies, which also was like
Yeah.
a film that really forced me to like think like more radically about like my these like beliefs that built of like what's wrong and what's right, and being able to like see through Bella Baxter's eyes helped me to just like really clear out, just approach the world with like a beginner's mind, if that makes sense,
Mm. Mm.
and like really just see it as like a stranger in this really clear way.
Yeah. The thing I was like most excited about in the film, I mean, there was a lot for me, but the production design was so exquisite and just so lavish. I mean, it's like it was just
Truly.
over the top in every way, And I'm looking through the credit. Shona Heath and James Price and were the production designers, and then there's a whole slew of art directors. And what's so cool is like I looked at their credits, and it's not like these people have been working on these huge blockbuster movies that you think of as having amazing production design. I love that like this film just I feel like explodes on the screen visually, and
Mhm.
there's so much. I mean, the thing that I kept getting from it, and I realized like what I think for me at least, what Reddit is like the value of play, and there's so much playfulness in the film, like
Mm.
in the wardrobe, which is like simultaneously elegant, but like she's wearing shorts, like baggy shorts, the entire movie, which give
Right.
her this huge range of movement and all this, and everyone looks like she looks so comfortable the whole movie while still, and playful, and there's just like frills and colors and that these buildings have swirls and amazing patterns, and also the fact that they did so much miniature work, like the ship is a miniature, and a lot of those city sets that like the big exteriors are miniatures, and those amazing like chapter kind of like
Oh, I
when they show the
loved
chapter
it.
things, oh, and they have these like
Oh,
surreal like Dali-esque like
Yeah.
portraits almost of her, and so I think what I heard also is some fascinating interview segments where I guess, and I know Chris, you want to talk about performance, so this might meld into what you're going to say, but like I guess Lanthimos, they did like a week or more of rehearsals, but it wasn't like rehearsing scenes. It was just like play activities, like them
Mm.
doing like physical improv together and like physical games together and like pushing their like
Mm.
all just basically them
Oh,
just
cool.
playing in a studio for a week. And then when they would get on, I was a segment with Mark Ruffalo, and then he's like, I remember when I shot my first scene, I was trying to act, and like, yeah, and I guess Yargos came up to him and was like, "You've done all this before. Just do what you did in the studio when we were just playing. Like,
Mm.
stop
wow,
acting and just
that's
start
so
playing."
interesting.
Honestly,
And
Wow.
like,
if I just may, like Mark Ruffalo impressed the hell out
oh
of
my
me, like
God.
way more than he
He
ever has. Like he just really showed his range, and I didn't think he was able to go where he went in this film
Oh
mm,
yeah.
with like
What a
like you said,
brave
like with
choice too.
such play and such, but at the same time like so genuine and so funny, and
so
it was
funny.
like he
So
nailed it. He
so
totally
funny. I
nailed
mean,
it.
and he's definitely no Bruce Banner in this movie.
Yeah.
I
Well, like I
know.
Um,
said, like look at that range, right? Between those two is really great.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That he has, honestly, he has one line in this movie that I actually couldn't stop laughing at at least 2 or 3 scenes after it had moved on. I was feeling bad for everyone around me because I was still laughing. But there's a point in this movie where, sorry, I mean, just thinking about it now, but he's really distressed, and he's sitting down. I think they're in Paris. He's sitting on a bench in like this park.
I know what you're going to say. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And this, passerby just happens to walk past with their beautiful dog, this really beautiful dog that just, goes up to him to sniff him, this random stranger on the bench. And he turns to the owner and says, "I will kick your fucking dog to death." Well, it was just so shocking and such an awful thing to say that I couldn't help. I was in stitches for at least a good 3 minutes.
Well, and I think what excites me so much about it, and Ruffalo said this too, it was on Variety's like actors interviewing actors. He was talking with Robert Downey Jr., but he talked about how there's so much fear about that, because he's like, I'm going to be nude on screen. I'm going to be swearing on screen. I'm going to be he's quite a despicable character,
Yeah.
And he talked about, I think, this important distinction between like, and this is what I love about this is like what I love about, I think, the theme of the film that really came through to me is the importance of play and the ways that when you approach the world playfully and like, I'm just going to experience this, and I'm going to, in this Bella Baxter way of like, I'm going to go out and try this, but then also have the clarity to just see things for exactly what they are.
Exactly what they are. Yeah.
And be able to just go back on stuff and say, I experienced that, don't want to experience it again. Mm-hmm. And that's such a playful way to approach things. And it actually was this light bulb moment for me where I'm like, I think Yorgos Lanthimos, like, I think he loves that. I think he loves just being like, let's play with this and see how it feels and present it. And we don't have to like hang our hats on it. And I think it's a scary thing to do in like the 21st century where, like it's so, we want to peg people in and say, well, you're the type of person who likes that, or you said that once, and so you'll probably say it a million times again. And I kind of like love about, this film that's kind of like, oh, like it's so absurdist and takes these like big risks and does these wild things. But ultimately, Bella Baxter has the clarity to be like, that was a mistake. Let's not do that. Or like, oh, I've learned what I need to from that, time to move on. And and I think that's I love that, like the movie is just so playful for me. And there's so many scenes where the characters are just clearly shocking each other too. Like they're so clearly surprising each other. Mm-hmm. And he talked, he talked a little bit about like how they didn't actually do really like stunt rehearsals, like that scene in the cafe where the guys are tackling him and stuff and dragging him to the ground. Basically, Lanthimos was like, just do it, like just go for it. And so it's like all these people like dragging him around and he's throwing stuff at people, and like that's all just happening, like
it's
they're just doing it.
Yeah,
it's just play.
Right.
It's just play.
Right.
And I love the playfulness in places where even in like the brothel where you would not expect this place to have any elements of playfulness, and she's able to inject this playfulness and experimentation into it. And the play is always human. She's seeking connection at the end of the day. She's seeking connection. And I think I as someone who like, I'm a writer and director, and I always think of my work as play. And I just like, as soon as I saw that on screen, I was like, I can get behind this movie. I was excited about it.
I love that. I think that's the right word for it as well, Ian. This movie is so playful. That comes through in every aspect of the film. And especially, again, we'll talk about it now, but with the performances. And, it must be so great for, Yorgos or anyone else in the cast to sort of look around you on set, look at who you're surrounded by, look at how everyone is bringing their absolute, they're bringing their A game. They're bringing all their playfulness and bravery and fearlessness. And, you look to your left and, Emma Stone is completely naked doing something absolutely crazy, but right next to her you got Mark Ruffalo matching her and doing the exact same thing. And in a way that must feel so comforting and freeing, and it absolutely, you can feel it comes from Lanthimos himself. It comes from the top down, and you have to be so game. You have to be game. You have to meet this movie on its terms for it to work. I think if any actor in this film even half shied away from anything they were doing, it would crumble. And I think when you have Willem Dafoe as part of your main cast, you just look to him. just look to him, because he's the king of insane, and yet he always grounds it and makes it work. It reminds me of this story that I think Kate Winslet once told in an interview about was it Harvey Keitel? And I think I can't remember what movie they were in together, but she was talking about, they decided, he approached her and said, would you like to, run it through a rehearsal of our scene? She said, sure. And then he dropped to the ground and he became a baby, which was not the scene whatsoever. And he started rolling around, wanting her to react to him as a child, and she was like, what the fuck is going on? But I feel like that's exactly like the DNA of where it was all born from in this film. But yeah, I think Emma Stone's performance is incredible. It's so bold, it's so fearless. She sheds any sort of movie star iconography or persona about. She just strips it all away, literally, and in such an incredibly inspiring and like I said, bold way. And I think everyone in the cast matches her with that. That's the thing that I most loved about this film, was the performances.
Yeah, and too, like that. Just going back to like the arc of her character is just so drastic, and from point A to point B, she just changes so much, and like incrementally. So it's quite subtle. So like she's changing her body language. She's like becoming more coordinated. She's having a better grasp of words and like saying them, and it happens so subtly and gradually that like it felt like Emma Stone has just such a wonderful, like, stable grasp on each scene and exactly where she was at, like, in her story, which I think was super impressive.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point. I agree. Absolutely agree. Such a physical performance as well.
Super physical, yeah.
Extremely. Yeah. I have to say, Mark Ruffalo's accent was hilarious. It really reminded me of Mike Myers' accent from Inglourious Basterds. Do you remember his? It's very much yes, it kills me.
So great.
All of and like every performer was firing on like all cylinders. I loved the tattooed woman, the brothel.
Oh my god,
Catherine Hunter is her name.
Okay, she was fabulous.
She was incredible.
Really
I couldn't take my eyes off her.
Yeah,
she plays, where you might know her from is, did you guys see the Coens tragedy of Macbeth?
Yeah,
no,
she plays the witch, like the hag.
Witch.
Yeah, and she's amazing in that too. Yeah, she's incredible.
She is. Yeah.
Cool. So, shall we kind of wrap it up?
I know we could talk for a long time about this, but
so much more to say.
Do you have any just final point you want to land on, Chris?
Well, I guess what I'll say is just going back to what Ian mentioned earlier about Portugal. I'm half Portuguese. My mother's Portuguese. This is the best Portugal has ever looked. It's such a fantastical, completely unreal, like stage-bound, colorful, romantic place. And I just love how Emma Stone just absolutely gorges on those little custard cakes called pastel de natas. My favorite. So so almost to have that cultural link there, I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Do you shove the whole thing in your mouth as well when you eat them, or
two? I've never heard about shoving the whole thing in your mouth, but I was like, I'm going to try that next time.
Well, and I love, like, anyways, like what it's such a great little metaphor for, I think, the whole film, which is like she ends up just bouncing against these people who have these different ways of living their life, right? And it's like Mark Ruffalo's character, his way of life is shove the whole thing in your mouth, And what's great is she tries it, and she does it to 20 of them, and then she vomits. And it's like, what a great metaphor for what the film is, which is just like, try a lot of different ways of living your life, and you'll find naturally life will give you the consequences. And if you have the clairvoyance, or I guess the clarity to see that for what it is, then you can decide, well, maybe next time I shouldn't eat 20 of those. But there maybe was not that much wrong with doing it with seeing what it felt like to eat 20 of them. And, just because like, yeah, like then or then you've learned or something. I think there's something beautiful about that, especially as a parent, like letting your kids kind of go and just step in it and let them kind of figure it out a little bit on their own.
I love that, Ian. I love that. Yeah, that's go on, Nate.
Yeah, well, I just want to leave with like I really encourage people to go see the film and watch it, because I always appreciate a piece of art or like a story that challenges me, and I feel like I came away from this film having shed some like significant judgments that I was holding about society, about people and people's choices, and felt like I could just see humanity a little bit more clearly and with some more acceptance and love with my heart, and like just more neutrality, so I super appreciate that. And like, even though it can be a hard film to watch, thankfully it's also a fun film to watch. And I would encourage people to really like lean in, even if what you're seeing is like very striking or at times like disturbing. I feel like the ultimate message, like Ian was saying, is like really positive and really asking us to like take a step further into, how do we want to be like seeing the world and like being a part of it.
Absolutely. Real quick, do you guys have a pairing for this? What would you pair it with?
Daisies. 100%.
I was gonna actually.
No,
I considered.
I said it first.
No. I have a different one.
Okay.
But when I was thinking about pairings, I was like, Daisies would be a good pairing for this movie. So I'm so glad you said it.
Daisies, the Russian movie that we watched this in film club. Right? Is it Veronica Chittilova? It's a Czech film.
It's a Czech film. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Chittilova.
Yeah, and like the reason being is just for what I just said. That film did a similar thing, which challenged me to think about life and people and women and men and art too, and like the way you approach telling a story in just all different ways, which was hard, but rewarding.
My pairing, interestingly, is another Czech film. My pairing would be Alice, the 1988 film by Jan Svankmajer, which is a surrealist like stop animation / live action adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. It is such a trip and just a visual treat for the eyes. It's simultaneously horrific and beautiful. And it's basically just like Alice, this young girl, goes into this like nightmare world of stop animation creatures. But it's pretty fascinating and interesting. And it just reminded me of the absurdity of this film, as well, kind of an innocent woman kind of going and encountering deeply absurd things. I'm a big fan of it. I like it a lot.
Very cool. All right. Well, mine is very different. The first thing I thought of was the movie The Jerk. I don't know if you've ever seen it. 1979, fun. Steve Martin. Yeah. I haven't seen it in so many years, but I think it's the reason I chose it is because it just reminded me of the kind of performance Emma Stone gives. Extremely committed physical performance. He's a very simple-minded, naive human being that's very sheltered and decides to head out into the world and just have experiences, and how that eventually changes him. So
you want to know something really special? I went to a Q&A where Emma Stone was with Emma Stone in Santa Barbara when La La Land was running.
Love it.
And she was asked what her favorite movie was, and she said The Jerk.
What?
Stop it!
Yep.
Oh, super
and
cool.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Phoenix Cinema Podcast.
So she would be so pleased to hear you say that this movie reminded you of The Jerk, because
cool.
She loves that movie.
That's
you
amazing.
nailed it, Chris. Wow, that's interesting.
Thank you. All right, so cool. Yeah, I think we could really talk for another hour about this one, and maybe we'll revisit it again further down the line. But so excited to do this with you guys. I want to give special thanks to the Phoenix Cinema for allowing us to do this. We're going to have so much fun with it, and I can't wait to discuss what they'll be showing next. Our music is by Stefan Krieger. This was edited by Noah Anderson, and we'll be back soon. Thank you, guys.